Because they say something like...
Testing, testing. I should set up the sound stuff as well, really.
Literally, if you're just talking...
Yeah.
You can just
this will probably be
just
fine
record it
for
through
now.
the speaker and the microphone in the laptop will be fine. You can even do music like that on shoddy laptops, let alone a Mac. Let's see.
So, F the BS, forget the belief system. It started as a 5D revolution. I had 5 points that I felt would make positive change in both personal and political lives. Those points were spiritual science revolution, electoral reform, psychedelic therapy revolution, hemp revolution, hemp industry revolution, replacing the oil industry with the hemp industry, and an energy revolution that's replacing non-renewable energy with renewable energy. Since then, I've also thought of 2 more points, turning my pentagram for Novus Ordo Seclorum, that's our New World Order, to a 7-pointed star. And those other 2 points are financial. You'll note that 3 of those points, I believe, were political, electoral reform, energy reform, and industrial reform. Industrial reform being the hemp revolution. And 2 of those points were personal, spiritual science, and psychedelics. Well, I say psychedelic therapy, more specifically ceremonial therapy. In my humble opinion, ayahuasca ceremonies are basically ancient group therapy sessions. So yeah, 2 forms of personal change and 3 forms of political change. The 2 added points that I'm thinking of are financial. That's gross national happiness, which Bhutan, the country Bhutan, has implemented. And that's where they're actually measuring people's well-being rather than the profits, because profits are not in the least bit... they don't reflect whether or not the population of a country is happy. A country can be in the midst of war and all sorts of austerity and still have gross national product might not reflect whether or not the population is content. So yeah, gross national happiness, and the other is universal basic income, which, to be perfectly honest, I don't know much about. I've brought up a couple of websites to have a brief introduction to, so we're going to learn about that at the same time, basically, shortly. I'm just on the Wikipedia page for gross national happiness. Gross national happiness, also known by the acronym GNH, is a philosophy that guides the government of Bhutan. It includes an index which is used to measure the collective happiness and well-being of a population. Gross national happiness is instituted as the goal of government of Bhutan in the Constitution of Bhutan on the 18th of July 2008. The term gross national happiness was coined in 1972 during an interview by a British journalist for the Financial Times at Bombay Airport, when the then King of Bhutan, I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, apologies, Jigme Singye Wangchuk, said gross national happiness is more important than gross national product. In 2011, the General Assembly passed resolution Happiness Towards a Holistic Approach to Development, urging member nations to follow the example of Bhutan and measure happiness and well-being, and calling happiness a fundamental human goal. In 2012, Bhutan's Prime Minister, Jigme Thinley, and the Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon of the United Nations convened the high-level meeting Well-Being and Happiness, defining a new economic paradigm to encourage the spread of Bhutan's GNH philosophy. At the high-level meeting, the first World Happiness Report was issued. Shortly after the high-level meeting, 20th of March was declared to be International Day of Happiness by the UN in 2012 with Resolution 66/28. Bhutan's Prime Minister, again, probably going to mispronounce this, Tsering Tobgay proclaimed a preference for focus on more concrete goals instead of promoting GNH when he took office, but subsequently has protected the GNH of his country and promoted the concept internationally. Other Bhutanese officials also promote the spread of GNH at the UN and internationally. The next paragraph goes into GNH defined. I might get more into that shortly. I'm just going to read about basic income according to Wikipedia and maybe this Wired article briefly as well. But I'll start with Wikipedia because it's always a good start. Basic income. This article is about a system of unconditioned income to every citizen. For the specific form financed on the profits of publicly owned enterprises, see social dividend. Basic income, also called Universal Basic Income, UBI, Citizens' Income, Citizens' Basic Income in the United Kingdom, Basic Income Guarantee in the United States and Canada, or Basic Living Stipend or Guaranteed Annual Income or Universal Demo Grant, is a governmental public program for a periodic payment delivered to all on an individual basis without means test or work requirement. Sounds like free money. The incomes would be unconditional. A basic income would vary with age, but with no other conditions. Everyone of the same age would receive the same basic income, whatever their gender, employment status, family structure, contribution to society, housing costs, or anything else. Automatic. Someone's basic income would be automatically paid weekly or monthly into a bank account or similar. Non-withdrawable. Basic incomes would not be means tested. Whether someone's earnings increase, decrease or stay the same, their basic income will not change. Individual. Basic incomes would be paid on an individual basis and not on the basis of a couple or household. As a right. Every legal resident would receive a basic income subject to a minimum period of legal residency and continuing residency for most of the year. Basic income can be implemented nationally, regionally or locally. An unconditional income that is sufficient to meet a person's basic needs at or above the poverty line is sometimes called a full basic income. Noise pollution. While if it is less than that amount, it is sometimes called partial. A welfare system with some characteristics similar to those of a basic income is a negative income tax in which the government stipend is gradually reduced with higher labour income. I could continue, but I'd like to waffle from my personal perspective for a bit. Basically, I can imagine an argument against universal basic income would be, why should people get free money, etc. Our nations are rich and they spend billions on war. They can afford to provide people with money. Now, I'm earning currently, personally, but there were years when I was not earning and I was focused on creativity, focused on making music, and focused on what I believe to be positive change and activism. And if I had a basic income at that point, I could have invested in TEFL courses, I could have invested in music courses, I could have invested in music studios. Now, yeah, a lot of people may waste that money if they were given the chance. But I believe most people aren't lazy. Most people have passions, they have hobbies, they have things, positive things they would invest that money into. That's my humble opinion. So I think that a universal basic income wouldn't fund people's habits as much as it would fund people's hobbies and passions. And people would be able to invest in themselves. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. But I would like to talk to someone who's experienced it being implemented, and I'd like to talk to someone who's an expert in the concepts, and I'd like to talk to someone who disagrees with the concepts and actually have debates on it. So yeah, that's an option. But yeah, as I said, I don't know much about universal basic income, and the two ideas of financial change, both gross national happiness and universal basic income, are two relatively new additions to the subjects I want to discuss on the podcast. So yeah, this is just an introduction to those concepts, and I will elaborate on the original 5 concepts: spiritual science revolution, electoral reform, shamanic therapy and ceremonial therapy, hemp industrial reform, and renewable energy reform in future discussions. I'm hoping to talk to experts in these fields to give these ideas the authority and weight that they deserve. So yeah, watch this space. But this is just an introduction to the vibe, basically. So yeah, Novus Ordo Seclorum is a prophecy that the fascists and capitalists do not have a monopoly on. The New World Order is ours to define, and yeah, these are my ideas. I'd like to expound on them with like-minded light players. Stay blessed. F the BS. Forget the belief systems.